Good evening. Today I will discuss about tyrosine kinase D842V mutation in PDGFR alpha as driver mutation in gastrointestinal stromal tumor and its implication. Gastrointestinal stromal tumor is the most common mesenchymal tumor of GI tract. Majority of them are driven by either c-KIT or PDGFR alpha. And as per current paradigm, it has become very important to see the molecular subtype of GIST. This is very important for therapeutic decision making as well as to understand the biology of the disease. So looking at the mutation spectrum of GIST, the most common mutation is c-KIT and it is almost 80%. The most common site is exon 11. PDGFR alpha mutation accounts for 8% of all mutations, and the most common type of which is exon 18 D842V mutation, causing substitution of aspartic acid to valine in the activation loop domain. They arise from stomach, mesentery, and omentum. Others are wild-type GIST. So where are these mutations located? Exon 9, it is located in extracellular domain. Exon 11 in juxtamembrane. Exon 13 in ATP binding site. Exon 17 activation loop domain. And similarly, the exon 18 mutation of PDGFR alpha is located in activation loop domain, while exon 14 in ATP binding site, exon 12 in juxtamembrane. So exon 18 D842 accounts for 5 to 6% of all the mutations in upfront GIST. Why this is unique? This is unique because it doesn't respond to imatinib. Secondly, till 2020 in advanced disease, surgery was the only modality, especially in small volume metastasis. Dasatinib at some point of time was also considered a treatment strategy in NCCN 2018, but it was based upon single patient response. So this is the comparison of, this is a retrospective study of 60 patients with PDGFR alpha, advanced type GIST, and it was, they were all treated with imatinib. As you can see, this is the curve for non-D842 mutation. This is the curve for D842 mutation. Median PFS in D842 mutation is 2.8 months as compared to non-D842, which was 28 months. So this is the NCCN guideline, which suggested in 2018 that dasatinib could be an option for D842V mutation, but this was based upon a phase 2 trial with single patient of D842 and partial response by dasatinib. Before doing further discussion, I'll just discuss about the types of tyrosine kinase inhibitor. Type 1 tyrosine kinase inhibitor is the one that inhibits active kinase conformation, and type 2 is the one which inhibits inactive kinase conformation. Majority of tyrosine kinase inhibitors like imatinib, sunitinib, and regorafenib are type 2 kinase inhibitors. As you can see, exon 18 mutation happens in activation loop domain, and similarly exon 17 c-KIT happen in activation loop domain. So they shift the conformation of kinases to active conformation, and it is very understandable that exon 18 activation loop domain will respond to tyrosine to TKIs which are type 1, and similarly these exon 11 or exon 12 which might not shift this much of equilibrium to activation conformation, they might respond to imatinib, sunitinib, or regorafenib, which are type 2 kinase inhibitors. So BLU-285 was developed as type 1 inhibitor, and this was meant to address the activation loop mutations, especially PDGFR D842. This is the preclinical half maximum inhibitory concentration, that is IC50, for various kinases. So as we know, these are the type 1 kinases, crinolinib, midostaurin, and BLU-285, which is avapritinib. And we can see the activation loop domain, the IC50 for PDGFR 842 is sub-nanomolar as compared to 759 in imatinib, 120 in sunitinib, and 810 in regorafenib, showing the high potency of BLU-285, crinolinib, and midostaurin in this activation loop domain mutants. This is the kinome tree, which shows the selectivity of these drugs to various kinases. In this, the kinome tree shows around 390 kinases. And as you can see, avapritinib inhibits very few kinases. The kinases that are inhibited are shown by red dots, which is very similar to imatinib because it also inhibits very few kinases. Unlike sunitinib, regorafenib, which inhibit a lot of kinases and are type 1, type 2 inhibitors, crinolinib and midostaurin, which are type 1 inhibitors, yet they inhibit a lot of other kinases as well. This might also amount to off-target toxicity, and thus they were not carried on for research, just like, but unlike avapritinib, because of the fear of toxicity. So this is the registration trial for avapritinib, that is BLU-285. It was phase 1 open label multi-center trial with 17 centers. The typical parts were dose escalation part and dose expansion cohort. And the primary endpoint for dose escalation cohort was maximal tolerated dose, recommended phase 2 dose, safety. For dose expansion part, the endpoints are overall response rate and safety. Recommended phase 2 dose for avapritinib, that is BLU-285, was 300 mg per day, while maximum tolerated dose was 400 mg per day. There were a total of 56 patients with PTGFR 842 in Navigator trial. So the response were dramatic, and the response RECIST 1.1 response rate was 88%. Clinical benefit rate was as 98%. And considering the waterfall plot, you can see the only one patient had progression, while all other patients responded to treatment. This is the progression-free survival curve. And as you can see, 12 months PFS was 81%, 3 months PFS was 100%. So this is a population which before the introduction of avapritinib, it was 2.8 months of PFS median. So let's compare avapritinib in PTGFR 842 mutation as compared to imatinib in unselected GIST cohort. Responses to avapritinib is 88%, while imatinib is 50 to 60%. 9% of patients achieve complete response with avapritinib, while in imatinib it was 0 to 1%. Median PFS has not been reached on avapritinib, while median PFS in imatinib was 20 to 24 months. Clinical benefit rate is 98%. That means in this subtype, it is probably much better than imatinib as compared to general cohort with imatinib. However, there are few toxicities which are notable. The nausea, fatigue, anemia, periorbital edema, and vomiting are the notable toxicities. There are two special type of toxicities which are cognitive effect. Cognitive effect, that is memory impairment or confusion, happens in 41% of patients. Majority of them are grade 1, grade 2. Another serious side effect is intracranial bleed, which happen in 2% of patients. It is also notable that off-target toxicities like hypertension and hand-foot skin reaction are completely absent because avapritinib is selective PTGFR alpha 842 inhibitor, and it doesn't inhibit others like VEGFR or other off-target kinases. So regarding our experience with avapritinib, in 2020 we treated 5 patients and we got RECIST 1.1 partial response in 3 out of 5 patients. Median progression-free survival was 6 months. So this is the patient with PTGFR D842 mutation. And as you can see, we initially tried imatinib. How this patient, after 3 months, the disease almost doubled. This is the liver metastasis showing doubling. And here we tried avapritinib. This is pre-avapritinib. And this is after 3 months of avapritinib. And the lesion almost shrunk to this size, almost half the size. And this is after 1 year of avapritinib. Now the patient is in complete response. Avapritinib is continuing. Patient is having few toxicities that I will discuss later. Also in exon 17, which is again activation loop domain for c-KIT, this is one of the patient who had extensive disease. This is the FDG ability. And after 3 months of avapritinib, this is after 6 lines of treatment. After 3 months of avapritinib, it was a complete metabolic response. However, after 6 months, patient progressed. These are the toxicities which he confronted. The major toxicities were rash, periorbital puffiness, hyperbilirubinemia, pleural effusion, and this is the periorbital puffiness in the patient who continued till 1 year. One of patient had grade 4 subdural hemorrhage, again, which is very serious toxicity of avapritinib, but it's found in 2% of patients. So what about resistance to avapritinib? Till now, we know about resistance to imatinib, resistance to other TKIs, but since hardly any patients have progressed on avapritinib, so it is still in infantile stages, the mechanism of resistance or the knowledge about mechanism of resistance. And this is the recent paper which shows that the mechanism of resistance in avapritinib is still lies in PDGFR mutations only. And the secondary resistance mutations are in exons 13, 14, 15. And there is a possibility that type 2 inhibitors might work in resistant cases, or the combination of type 1 plus type 2 inhibitors. And this is yet to be known. However, there are few other questions which are yet to be answered. What about adjuvant setting in high risk cases? Because right now it's not recommended in adjuvant setting, but maybe in time to come it would be recommended. And what about in patients who have undergone metastectomy? So many of us might not start it because of toxicities, because in 2% intracranial hemorrhage might be life threatening. So this is yet to be known. What about post-progression therapies? As I told you that the majority of secondary mutations happen in PDGFR exon 14, which is ATP binding site and might respond to type 2 inhibitors. So this is the time where it could be combined or the therapy could be shifted to type 2 inhibitor. And since almost 9% of patients achieve complete remission, so taking a cue from CML, is it prudent to stop it after 1 year or 2 years or so? And because long-term treatment becomes difficult because of cognitive problems or risk of intracranial hemorrhage, however, this still needs to be known. Thank you.